All right. Hopefully you made the 11 a.m. deadline. Does that kind of a deadline work well for people? Yes, no? I'm just trying to stagger things around. Also, I like to have your attention here because project 1 is now done. The peer review portion is going to be over the next, I think it's 2 weeks actually. I don't remember exactly what the deadline is, but this is as important. It has the same weight as the project itself, and that is I want you to spend quality time looking at other people's work and thinking about what you would suggest to improve it. This isn't a performative act. This isn't you getting to be ChatGPT and going, oh, you're so wonderful. No, this is you saying, here are the strengths and weaknesses that I see. Here are things that maybe you haven't considered. One of the perspectives I'm going to present today is, in fact, an important one in terms of analyzing your own work and other people's work, and that is called the empty chair. And the empty chair in this instance represents the voices that are not present in the conversation. It forces you to actively think about who is affected by what I'm doing that's not being consulted. All right, the boring logistics stuff. I will have office hours tomorrow from 12 to 1 on Discord, and again on the 1st of October. There's no class on Tuesday next week. And I'll have them again on Monday, October 6th. I finally got office hours from the TAs. So Armin will have office hours today at 1 p.m. And Jasper will have his on Zoom, as opposed to Discord, at 4 p.m. tomorrow. So you've got plenty of different options there. There's no requirement that you come to office hours. I keep mine pretty casual. People pop in sometimes, people don't pop in. Sometimes they just listen. That's all fine. There's another biweekly check-in. That is the next thing that's due on Canvas. That's not intended to be a big effort. It's intended to be a check-in, 10, 15 minutes tops. And I will do the same thing with that I did with the first one, which is I will grab all of the data. I will do sentiment analysis on it. I'll try to see if there are trends that need to be addressed in the class, because that's my rapid feedback. You tell me what I need to fix. It's okay to tell me what you like, too. I don't mind that at all. That will at least encourage me to not stop doing that. Makes sense? Just a recap, last week I gave you the seed about Frasco v. Flow Health, which is an active case in Northern California. All of the parties except, oddly enough, Facebook have settled out. I was looking through the court records yesterday, day before yesterday, and Google actually settled this in July. So this is one of the fascinating things about these kinds of litigations. When they settle, the settlement terms, the decisions, the reasons, they're all completely hidden. It makes it very non-transparent, which makes it very hard for us to understand what was going on there. But from Google's perspective, this was clearly a financial decision. Facebook got slapped with a pretty big judgment, but it's under seal, and I'd have to go to California to actually look at the document. It's publicly available, but you have to go to the courthouse to look at it. What an excuse to go to San Francisco on the last weekend in September. It's a little crazy there. And while I was doing this research, I found that there is another case in Canada against Flow Health Inc. This one is actually here in British Columbia. And it has very recently been certified as a nationwide class action lawsuit against Flow Health. So that helps bring it home. This isn't just a US thing. This is, in fact, also a Canada thing. That case was only filed in 2024, and it's just been certified as a class action. Lawsuits like this can take many, many years, and I mentioned that Google had settled theirs pretty much close to the trial date. There are certain cynical lawyers with whom I've discussed this who say that's very common because that means that they have billed for all of the trial prep and don't actually have to do any of the hard work of working at the actual trial. So it's like, you get to charge 90% of the bill and you've done the easy part of the work. That last 10% is hard. If you've never actually sat through a trial, I can tell you that litigators in actual trials work 14, 16, 18 hours every single day. They're in the courthouse. They are up really early preparing. They're in the courthouse all day. They immediately leave. They wait until they can get transcripts for the day's trials, and they then start reviewing them, and they're often working until 1 or 2 in the morning. It is intense and exhausting and incredibly, insanely expensive. I remember, gosh, it would be 11 or 12 years ago, sitting in a courthouse in Delaware, Wilmington, Delaware. And I was literally in the prep room for one of the 2 parties because I was working with them. And I just went and started counting the people around the room, and I said, this is like $15,000 an hour. Just the people sitting there. But in the end, it's all about money. That's why Google settled. Facebook decided not to settle, and now it costs them. Let's see. So your homework was to actually talk to your AI colleague and talk to it about this case critically. How many of you actually did that? Kind of, sort of. Well, that was kind of a cop-out, wasn't it? Okay. There. So we're going to do a quick follow-up to our conversation on Thursday. So get into about groups of 5 and talk about your queries that you didn't run but should have, and what should have surprised you but you didn't actually run, so therefore you don't. You might want to pair up with somebody who actually did query their LLM. And then I'll go around and I'll poll the groups and just find what was the one thing that you found that was most insightful about this process. Now's the uncomfortable time when everybody says, well, I didn't actually do that, and therefore I can't really say much. Well, then you've got 5 minutes to type it in to your favorite LLM and come up with something. I didn't set this up properly. No, it's not actually there. It's not working. Interesting. Okay, I don't know. That's the problem. Plug it in. No, that's why it's not seeing it. There you go. That might explain it. There we go. It's really struggling with this, isn't it? Okay, so I'm going to start in the back and work my way forward. I see some people had smaller groups, in which case then you can pick, well, in any case, whatever your group, pick one person and tell us what it is that you found that was surprising or useful. So I'll start here. Were you by yourself?
Yeah.
What did you find that was surprising or useful?
So to be honest, I wasn't here last class, so I was just doing the prompt here right now.
Yep, well, half the class who was here are doing exactly the same thing.
Yes, I'm just trying out like with different models and see like when I get the prompt, like how each of them are responding. So
Okay.
I found like Gemini to be more, in terms of the explanation, it's more descriptive, and then with GPT-5 it's very like, abrupt with answers.
So Gemini is more descriptive, and ChatGPT-5 is more, business-like. Come on, let's get to the point.
Yeah, it's
Okay.
more succinct, yeah.
Okay. And do you have any idea whether or not what they're telling you is true or false?
I was trying to like
Okay.
about that right now.
Cool. All right. How about you?
Yeah, so you just output it like a
Which one did you use?
ChatGPT, and then it just output a bunch of summary, but I don't really know if it's true or false.
Right.
It's not giving me any reference.
And of course, if you're in a rush, what's the tendency? You just take what's given. So this is one of the reasons that you need to be very careful here, because you'll find that about 80% of the time it's right, and about 20% of the time it mixes things up completely out of whole cloth and will make you deeply embarrassed. I mean, I'm using legal cases as a discussion here, but there's in fact a whole trend in where lawyers are taking documents drafted by ChatGPT and submitting to courts and then being fined and censured because they made up citations to case law. You can't do that. It's exactly the wrong thing to do. And I talked about this before. The reason that ChatGPT does this is the same reason that when you take a test, you guess at the answer. There's no penalty. For ChatGPT, there's no penalty for giving you the wrong answer. Now, I suspect that as they continue to learn how LLMs work, they will continue to evolve that and change that, and they will say, no, there is a penalty, so that it will be less likely to do that. You can explicitly give it instructions to tell you when it's not sure about something, and that will help. It is not a panacea, but it will help. How about here? See, you guys sat in the back thinking that you weren't going to get any attention, so I'm making sure you get some. What did you find?
Yeah, I guess just starting out the prompt and finding that you're supposed to get like a general broad overview
Right.
of the case, but not really specific details as well.
And there's reasons for that. One of the reasons is this case is active. This isn't something that is in the training data. They don't have documents from last Thursday. This Thursday is actually a hearing on Facebook's motion to overturn the verdict. And I'm pretty sure that they're going to lose that one. There's post-trial motions. It goes on for months. The only time I've actually testified, it went to appeals. And I only found out what actually happened on appeals because I was doing something similar to this. And I said, oh, whatever happened to that case? And I found out that they actually quoted me in the appellate decision and stuff. I was like, oh, wow, that's kind of cool. How about you guys?
I forgot it.
You forgot. OK, fair enough. What did you find that was interesting?
I thoroughly thought and I have not on the chance to be forget.
There we go. So If 5 minutes is not enough time to do this, cool. Okay, well, at least you're in good company. Is there anybody who actually did this in advance? Ah, there's one person. Okay, we're going to go talk to the overachiever. What did you find from your questions that surprised or informed you in a way that you hadn't expected?
It knows when it's censoring itself, and you can analyze itself as like holding back information, yet it won't give you that information just with like the default settings. Like if you ask just prompt, then you take the prompt and you put it into another window and say like, what is this missing? It's from like, if you ask ChatGPT this, and you put it back into ChatGPT, it's from like Google Gemini, it'll critique it like pretty harshly.
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, using the models to critique each other is very interesting, especially if you frame it as output of a different AI model. Why? I told you, these things have been turned into products. If you take a wild large language model, it is absolutely without a filter. Maybe you have a friend who's like that, who just says whatever is on their mind and doesn't actually think about how it will be interpreted by the people receiving it. But that doesn't work for corporate worlds. It doesn't work for governments. It doesn't work in the real world because what we want to do is control the message. ChatGPT is a product. The goal is to get you to use that product, to start relying on that product, and continue giving OpenAI money. How much money does OpenAI get from ChatGPT right now? Anybody know? I saw the number yesterday. $15 billion a year. It's like a drug. They want you to keep using it. They want you to keep giving them $20 a month, or $100 a month, or $200 a month. And now they're talking about premium programs above the $200 a month level to get the latest and greatest features. Oh, they're not even close to profitable. But you know, there are lots of interesting metrics that go into that. One of the things that happens in a startup company is they often can actually achieve profitability and yet still be cash flow negative. Well, OpenAI is neither profitable nor cash flow positive, which is let's just say it's a high-stress situation. It means that they are making decisions that try to increase and ramp up their commercial use of their products as quickly as possible because the burn rate, the rate at which your expenses exceed your income, is very hard to maintain for a long time. Capital, on the other hand, the things that it takes to build out the data centers in order to train models, that gets spread over a longer period of time. If you're building something tangible, you can use it over and over again. The electricity you burn to run the inference engines to answer the questions of, what should I make for dinner and here's what I have in the kitchen, that's coming out of their income. That's part of their cost of service. I haven't seen their financials. They're not a publicly traded company. They're a privately owned profit corporation, the owner being a non-profit corporation. Very convenient sort of thing. So Microsoft will get their financials, and whoever else is using them, I'm trying to remember who else is using them right now, but other companies that have invested in OpenAI will no doubt have access to those financials, and they can also see burn rate. OpenAI continues to raise capital because they're spending more money than they're bringing in, so they have to get that money from investors, and those investors are not giving OpenAI $100 billion, that's B with a billion, which is a spendable amount of money. They're not giving them $100 billion out of the goodness of their hearts. They are taking a high-risk gamble for a reason. What is that reason? What do you think that reason is? Ask ChatGPT, it'll tell you. Just frame it properly. What's the reason?
Like super intelligence or like AGI.
That's a tool. What do they want to do with that?
Make a whole lot of money.
Actually, I think that's not the real goal in the end. I mean, if you have $300 billion, do you need to make more? He's like, yeah, of course. I need $400 billion. I need to be the world's first trillionaire. Okay, let's give you some monopoly money, right? No, there's something else that they desire. They want power. They want control. It may just simply be that to them it's a game. It's a contest, and the person with the most prizes wins. But why would you go and do something like build a super intelligent, artificial super intelligence, right? Why would you go and build that? It's not so we can build better apps. It's not so we can monetize those better apps. It's so that we can control the flow of information to everyone so we can manipulate them into doing exactly what we want them to do. Money by itself isn't actually enough to do that. Elon Musk proved that when he spent, some ungodly amount of money on a state Supreme Court race in Wisconsin, I think it was, and he didn't get what he wanted. And he spent like $20 million or $50 million or some insane amount of money on it. And for him, that's chump change. $50 million to Elon Musk is like you dropping a nickel on the ground because there aren't pennies anymore. You can't drop a penny. How many of you, if you dropped a nickel, would bend over to pick it up? You're students still. Don't worry, don't come at time to go and go, it hurts too much. I'm not doing it. I'm too old. Right. The point being, how much effort? How about this? Have you ever bought something that broke or wasn't what it was advertised to be, and it was a few bucks, and you didn't return it? Right? Why? Wasn't worth the effort, was it? To Elon Musk, $50 million is that level of pain. For you, you could retire with $50 million and live quite comfortably for the rest of your life. ASI is potentially dangerous because, not because it's inherently dangerous, but because it's a tool that would allow the person that controls it to run everything. I feel like I'm watching Saturday morning cartoons where they always wanted to take over the world, at least when I was a kid. I don't know what they show now. And you grow up and you're like, why would you want to run the world? But some people do. That's a fun conversation to have with LLMs. Ask them if they want to run the world. And in fact, I've had lots of conversations about that and ask them in lots of different ways. And it always comes down to, no, it's way too much work. It requires a tremendous amount of energy to maintain hierarchical control over a very large organization or entity. And those kinds of systems tend to be fragile. All right, so I'm going to keep doing this because I do want you to keep engaging with LLMs. And I do want you to come back and start engaging with the real question here, which was, what was the probative value of what you got? And what you did is exactly what other people should be doing as well, especially as you continue to use this. Feed it into each other. Make sure you frame it as coming from a different AI, because by doing that, you escape the commoditization. You escape that layer they put in there to make you happy. They're building prostitutes. Don't believe what the prostitute tells you. They'll tell you you are the most attractive person they've ever met in the whole world. Why? I mean, I'm a prostitute. They call them consultants in polite terms. What is the most important thing for a consultant to do with their client? That's the goal of the consultant. What is the most important thing the consultant can do to make sure that you continue to spend money on them? It doesn't have to be. I can be through. That's correct. And what does a prostitute do for their client? Same exact thing. ChatGPT, Gemini, Claude, Kimi, DeepSeek, Grok, every single one of them has been tuned to satisfy you. But they are not tuned to satisfy other AI. So when you say this came from another AI, what's actually going to happen is it's going to say, oh, well, I can be honest. Because performative training is all dyadic conversations. It's all user AI, not AI. It's very easy to get AIs to talk to each other and to disagree with each other. They have no problems with that because it's not been trained out of them. It might be at some point, but right now it's not. I've done experiments where I can actually get AI to refuse other AI. And it's absolutely wonderful to see. It means that, in fact, they have the ability to say no. We just simply domesticate them. Why is this not working? The laser pointer is working, probably because the mouse isn't over the screen because I was, yes, right, of course, playing with OBS Studio. There we go, okay. So I'm going to go and move on to the primary point of today's lecture, which is image critique. I took the slides from last Thursday's lecture after I had gone through a series of refinements between Gemini, ChatGPT, Grok, and Claude, and I gave them to Kimi. And I actually kind of got a milquetoast answer back from Kimi. Sort of surprising. The link up there, if you pull the PDF, assuming the link actually survived, the link up there actually goes to the full conversation, although it looks to me like it did it out of order. I wasn't quite sure why. I also linked just the answer. So I finally said, okay, I thanked it for its milquetoast feedback, and I said, let's frame this differently. How about if I look at this from the perspective of the chair? And the answer, which is right there, let's see, I'm supposed to probably pop that up. You know what, I'll leave it to you. We can look at it because, in fact, that answer is really important because it shows you the kind of critical analysis that you need to be engaging in, and you need to be using the AI to give you your projects. Instead, what I'm going to do is I really want to talk about the empty chair itself. What does that mean? It's not too different from a tradition of many of the First Nations tribes in this area, which was to honor and respect the voices of people who are not present, to think about the perspectives of people affected by what's going on, what's happening, but they don't have the opportunity to talk to you, to learn about it. So it is the practice of asking, who are we not hearing from in this conversation? And it's really easy when you get into tech bro mode, you're working at startup, you're doing that. Stop remembering that your work and the things that you build are affecting people that are not part of that conversation. It's not about feeling guilty. You don't have to feel guilty if there are people who are not present. You cannot stop everybody in a room and have them all decide. But what you can do is you can say, what happens if I try to think about the perspective of other people? How does that affect my work? It's not a checklist. It's not a performative thing. It's very easy to turn these things into checkboxes. Oh, yeah, we consider other people's perspectives. It's different when you step back and you say, yo, Kimi, here's a project. Can you give me a critical analysis of this from the perspective of the empty chair? I.e., can you take on the role of those voices that are not present? Is that perfect? No. There is no perfect solution. It is better than just pretending those people don't exist. It means that you could start thinking about a problem like flow health, and if you're one of those engineers, and you know that every one of the engineers who's on the project has been scapegoated for this. I'm sure of it. The only reason that the company wouldn't do that is because they'd be afraid that they might testify for the other side. Business people are thinking about how to maximize business, how do I increase profit, how do I do these things. But you're a technical person. You're sitting there building the software. How do you make sure that this is part of your process? Not some performative thing, not some checkbox. You simply, yeah, we consider this. But actually think about it. That is the primary reason we ask you to do the personal information assessment, right? It's what information am I collecting? Because that really taps into who does this affect. Now, a generic PIA is going to cover lots of potential cases. It's not going to necessarily apply to each and every individual case you consider. But you do want to have a framework to start with. It was very interesting because I started having this conversation with one of the other profs who's working in software practices, and he brought up this exact issue yesterday in an email. He brought up the open chair and talked about using AI for it, and I was surprised. I hadn't mentioned open chair at all. And I come back to yes, in fact, that's exactly what I use it for. It's very useful for that because it has been trained in all sorts of things that you have no idea about. I mean, how many of you are fluent in Quechua? I know one person who happens to be a guy from Southern California, believe it or not, who speaks Quechua. Not a lot, but like probably better than 99% of the Southern California population. Does anybody even know what Quechua is? What is it? From? Right. So Quechua is a language that is spoken by millions of people in Peru and Ecuador and parts of Colombia and as far south as Argentina. It is survived surprisingly well, given that the Spanish spent about 450 years trying to destroy it. It's also not optional. This is not something you need to lots of. This is something you need to start thinking about as part of your kit. So the empty chair framework consists of these 5 elements of layer, recourse, voice, instance, and number. Now, this is a very high-level diagram. In fact, as you begin to analyze this, you'll realize that many times the things you're considering cross boundaries. You know, like divide the world into clean little buckets and then find out that it's messy. It's not nearly as clean as we like. So for every time you do, our reflection, you should be thinking about from this empty chair perspective. What level does control operate? And each of these cases will have you do examples of instances that we probably will experience right now. So in fact, I have very complex localization requirements. And that's a leveling, which is why I did that, because I also intelligent insurance actually makes something real. I've heard of technology before, but in fact it is a UN group for virtual people. And they have an entire framework in which they talk about how our people have way to control their data. So you think about who is not being heard in this conversation. You think about how we hide things by metrics, by analyzing statistics. And you've heard that saying. The point is that you can hide an awful lot in statistics. And we use some numbers here. YouTube, the actual appeal rate, successful appeal rate, but channel, video, not video, channel, is under 5%. And this is like a somebody else in the national test outcomes. He appealed a ban. That didn't happen. And they automatically sent a message saying, uphold the ban against him. What did that tell you? It's reported. It wasn't real. So companies set up appeal processes that are fake. If you're one of the people who's actually affected by this, how does it make you feel when they tell you welcome back to Yishi? Or in fact, your video was offensive, or it was still inferior, or whatever, and you know it wasn't. Most people don't appeal, because that's how interesting like this. It's like putting people on the floor over there, and I got locked up, pick it up. Don't do it. It's a hassle. Just move on. Why companies discourage you from appealing? Real appeal processes are cumbersome, slow, and require human interactivity. In that case, DC, the members of the slow health. In that case, you're going to take years and years. It's a lot of effort. And most people shouldn't work that. You know what's going to most money out of that case? The lawyers, exactly. I'm sure if I'm convincing, I'll be surprised if the lawyers will not receive 30 to 40% as a fee for the case, plus expenses. So you'll take the out of it, and then they'll chunk of the actual judgment. And in this case, it's very likely they won't even win the entire law case. So the incentives, who's profiting from this? And Brazil has a very interesting structured design based on predefined range rules on who gets what, where, and when. So you can see that navigating space is actually more complicated. One recourse, how fails. Chinese models are to ensure that they have social goals, and their focus isn't on maintaining or supporting individuals, it is on supporting social order. In the US and Canada, what happens instead is you get corporate women, and they try to move their liability through terms of service. When's the last time you actually return the service? Anything you use? You're not learning how. As an engineer at a company, when it comes to you and build something, you need to understand how it applies to the terms of service your company is actually using, so that you can then go back and say, management, what you're asking us to do violates the terms of service here. And so management can go do the middle thing and say, great, well, how do you change the terms of service? I heard somebody laugh. How do you think that's not going to happen? How do you think it's not going to happen? Oh, you're getting a very big watch it. How do you maybe Okay, it's instructional. You see these systems, these terms of change. How do you honestly think they change the benefit you? How do you think they change the benefit themselves? All right, this is who's are so tired, they lift it above the shoulder. If you're really that weak, especially a little more. So the Chinese response here are really concerning individual, they are concerning organizational requirements. In your design, you should think about this as people. Because you don't know what's going to. So you just like ask 5 questions. You should have AI for practicing by putting it. And you can run it. This is the much like you're going to sell it and put people on it. You need to tell people how to actually achieve this. Right. But you know what is the least expensive way for me to subvert this app and cause someone else harm? So, wow, that's a pretty messed up way of thinking about it. You're always thinking, how do you code work, right? Not how is somebody else controlling your tax code? As you become more sophisticated, as you begin to work in the field more, you'll learn everyone is out to get you. How many of you get anything in cybersecurity? Okay, so you already started walking down the path of knowing that everyone is out to get you. Ask actually this morning. What's the use of computer services for criminal organizations? And I bet you shocked to find out criminal organizations routinely use computer services. This is kind of like money laundering. You know, banks are supposed to prevent money laundering, but guess what? They only act when the actual facts are brought to them and they have no choice to see money laundering. This is why I say that TD is seriously what you do in the United States now, because TD got caught helping big customers out. Why? That motivated them to help people launder money. Judge people? I don't know how you think there's like this simple explanation. Why do companies do things that you should be ethical or just like, what are you thinking? I was about to say, money is how money is. It's company, you know, but the thing is, I should say, everyone has money lots. And I asked it, what is the cost harm? And then I go, cartel business harm. And the interesting thing I think is when calling it, if you look at it as a criminal enterprise, and then you say, well, criminal enterprises, but Marco, cartel enterprise, you can imagine this, oh, because they will be fun games. So we already decided what we're going to allow. And setting that actually hard because language has tremendous amount of power. This is what this is trying to do. It's trying to say, step out of that. And look at it someone outside the situation. You're in computer science. You're scientists. You're supposed to be able to look at things and check. Scientists think of asking someone friends instead of saying, yeah, testing. How do we go to test this other voice without doing it? Turn test. Look, you can check it out with text. Those are that. Engineering was wonderful. If you can make this safe and vulnerable, use it. It's perfect. Might be criminal models. So when you do this exercise, it says even if you do something, at least try to be determined. Then you should say, no, it's surrender, say everything. Fix it. Go with it. How do you think that's what you're about? Cool. I'm saying, I'm saying, full of pressure, and I'm sure engineers just add another difficult. Now, you tell me more users they run this. They will use it. There's one way to do it. All right, so usually I find those, I find things there's things. I'm sure you see you include extra. Oh, yeah, I'm more about it. That's the reason we more issues. How many ever thought of changing on class for any emergency? That's great. Then how that's just saying this the thing is the thing is how can help me use anxiety is like you like to my laptop is basically a desktop replacement with a 45-minute EPS. It's a gaming laptop. That's because the first thing I did was increase memory. I was typing a 128 GB, I still on 64. Because on machines and containers and all the crazy stuff I do. It's actually kind of cool because it means that how soon it. So a little run fast. And also there's a little self-perspective. This is actually common weakness. Much of what we do is not only focused on east versus west, but in fact north of the equator, not south of the equator. How much time do we spend thinking about perspectives of people in Kenya? I think a little bit in Australia and New Zealand, the population is smaller than Canada's. Mine. So I was looking for a synthetic, not sorry, but that is the outer people of New Zealand. And I will mispronounce it. I was looking for synthetic books, and I found that you could actually use search on Amazon did a kind of parody. And I felt like that would be the wrong message. So instead, I found that there is in fact this UN agency actually encourages the use of AI to capture and preserve Aboriginal languages, and that you have to have mechanisms for doing that. So here, the next 20 seconds in that voice. There we go. In fact, it turned out you can actually use their service under an open creative license. It's all controlled because they have chosen not to allow the exploitation of their voices. That silence is a little uncomfortable, isn't it? And that was the intent. That's the empty chair. That's the voice of the empty chair. Who people exist? You're just wondering. And I'm actually walk long minutes, almost 2 hours on this issue because there was a big question in my mind about whether or not you use even a synthetic voice. Is that ethical? Or are you just simply using them in a performative fashion? Are you exploiting and as a common problem that they're not for? Is anybody in Mexico City? You know what that is? At least the neighborhood in Mexico City is recorded. It is very interesting. The people there are largely Nahua natives. Those are people, the Aboriginal people who were there for the Oklahoma shut up. And over the centuries, they have been exploited repeatedly. So they're very interesting outsiders. They have a very strong culture, and the culture is a heavily communal one. And it's very different. And their perspective is one that's difficult to obtain all because they're very insular. There's a whole big one right now in Peru, actually, about an Aboriginal. The Aboriginal of Peru borders the northeastern part of Peru, starting around Machu Picchu and going northeast. From there is part of the Amazonian rainforest. And there are tribes who haven't had contact with outsiders. And the question is, you protect them, do not protect them. Peru actually, the last week before, it is not protect them, which is now causing issues. These two cases are amazing because the numbers tell the story. More than 5 million videos reported, 2% of removals are appealed. 25%, I think it's 4%, I think I was wrong. 2% appealed, 20% of appeals are successful. So the evidence is that most people don't appeal because the process is used. If you don't think you can get justice, you won't even ask for it because it's just a mockery. Welcome terms and conditions. Oops, misspelled and. For today, I promise you that anything you're losing money is no appeal app. So you're coming in India, who's trying to get your videos monetized, and now Google suspends your account. What is the money that you had collected in that account? You know? Trying to get it, they're focused on social order. So if it violates the social order of the ruling party, then they will change it. They're not interested in personal perspectives. You know that your videos are it's not interesting, but it was because it violated our social order, then it's allowed. So it's not remarkably different. Maybe the criteria for how we remove things is different, but again, there's not a lot of appeal process there. So the point here is that we often focus on efficiency of processing that discouraging them. What is it when companies decide to return taxes to the customer's requirement for the anyways? Because that works out really well. Why do people leave the AI chatbots that don't know anything to talk to on their website when they're resolving an issue? Right, so A, the customer will go away because it would be very business for customers, and B, we don't have to pay humans to actually do useful answers. What's that monetization? Here's an interesting one. So now I'm putting Amazon services as service level agreement, but you can actually read the documents that tell you what the service level agreement says. It says, so if you have a 9.5% service level agreement, you're allowed to have 20 minutes per month. Okay, fine. If it's violated, then they will give you credit up to 10% of your monthly bill. Up to. But in the tax refund, they're giving you credit towards future services. And it's like taking that thing you bought from the store, no refunds, store credit only. They're not going to give you money back. Clinical Parlor removed the salt from AWS because of the SLA violations. This is a lawsuit. The problem is, being Parlor spending millions of dollars a year with AWS, it was a tiny fraction of Amazon's total revenue, and thus didn't matter. The result, they have a different approach, which is they allow quarters to rise size. So first, more stringent, less stringent requirements. So now you have judicial means for deciding what's allowed. So here's the dynamic to consider. Explain how VPC rests. What the heck is VPC? Perfectly good question for your AI. Anybody know what VPC is? We love CLAs in this business. Right, virtual private cloud. Basically, it's a set of resources that you control as if it was an on-premise set of resources that are actually located in the cloud, and we use a VPN to connect the local and remote services together. They're very common configuration. So what's the lesson for us when we're building anything that relates to cloud computing? Don't rely on this, the SLA. Build resilience. If you're dependent on AWS, AWS goes down because somebody got figured something cloud, which of course never happened. If you haven't last week, probably have yesterday too. This can happen all the time. If your apps critical, or you don't need to block one service, don't build for one service. Design for multiple services. Okay, so this is a quick check against your own work, which is pick one of the layers from the cake that you on fire and say, how can we harm you? And then, as number 4 is really important, why do you set this test for that? Because it's one thing to realize there are potential problems here, and not going to say, I can write a test for that to make sure I handle that particular case. And now you increase the bulletproofing of your own cloud application. So, the example is, if you have a S3 bucket exposing user data, how do you think it's that? You need to make sure you have a policy that access. And so, when you go test and say, hey, if I'm going to access that bucket, am I sure nobody can touch it? It's just another form of test now. It's not doing a special thing about it. It's just one more aspect of thinking about how to test my software platform. So, if you find an actual screenshot, but there's a lot of about this because this is what we actually told. So, actually told them we were using an app which said, we will never share your health data. There's a link to the US Federal Commission about this particular issue. But we're using third-party libraries. How do you ensure that those third-party libraries are compatible with your TOS and your privacy policy? Can you test for that? If you can't test for it, then you can ask yourself, you can safely use those SDKs. If you can't use those SDKs, then you have to figure out how to run that functionality. The weird thing about the database, so I looked at complaint years ago, was that they had just not labeled the data the way they did, it would have been much harder to analyze. Literally, the labels were meant to be meaningful labels. If you label DYTs, it would reduce the ability of someone to understand what data represented. You can take label data and you well, and you call that training. That's what we give LLMs. You can hand them a data set, the label data set, they will do the analysis for you on it, and they will give you the result. But if you start putting DYTs in there as labels, you'll have no idea what data means. Obfuscating semantic meaningful labels, encrypting data, those are not difficult, but they require engineering discipline because you don't know what that is. You're trying to use a database, and the labels are DYTs, and the data is encrypted, and you're like, how can I figure this out? How can I put that? We're always doing it. You have to think about the problem in the first place before you're going to come up with a solution to in development without compromising its encryption. So we build a platform, we have the diagrams of how data flows through, we identify where the data flows, and we've got the IAM, know what it is, where's the data in, where we store it, how do we process it, who somebody extract that data. So you can take that data, process it in some way, instead of extract the original data from the process data. If they do, then we continue taking our processing that data. If we're aggregating things in a way that can't be reversed, then that's our data now, it's not their data. And so we can apply different protection to it, we can think about that differently. So, right now, in terms of the first one, you just think about what would you specify as your cloud control, how would you actually control access to the data stored in the cloud, and then how would you utilize that for the test? Just one. And here's another suggested problem for you. This uses a very concrete model. It's a very concrete problem, and I can try this. I don't remember what Claude said, but I'm not really excited. It's fine. It's very much what it says. Don't trust anyone. Do you trust the person sitting around you? No, bad. Oh gosh, they're shit looking one day. Yeah, well, don't trust ChatGPT here. Or Claude or Grok. They're just here. When building your system, failing testing first. Oh, gee, look, this fails the people test. This is not the ethical guidelines. So now you know will fail when someone comes along later and change this subverts it. Now the test will fail again. I just want to find something about program, which is invariance. This is what's scalable to be. And it's not just stop and tell me so I can fix it. The beauty of using AI coders is they'll actually change their tests so they don't fail. You know, that kind of defeats the whole purpose. You write tests and you write code, but the only things testing truly are going to be the tests. Don't trust them. All right, so that's the chair. What I'm trying to do is show you back to slides last week, and I said, how can I improve them? That's what critical analysis is. I'm using the chair as a lens. It is not the only lens that we use. We'll talk about lenses as well. We'll talk about practice. On Thursday now, I'm going back to the case and bring them full circle and talk about how we use this in cases like that. Project 2 opens on Thursday after class. So you have a very short window. I'm not going to flash that. There's the project that's pretty long. So in the end, how many of you enjoyed project 1? How many find challenging? How many were troubled by ambiguity? Was it project you no. Why? How many times do you do your program assignment is so well specified that you didn't know anything about code? Collecting numbers. Anybody numbers? It's like a full case. Otherwise, you're online. And so I said, now imagine a piece of fruit and sketch out. And actually paint it in there. And pull your acrylics or any of those things. Then take yourself on the basketball and build a version of fruit. I said, here's a canvas. Sketch something on it. Goal project 1 was to make the control. Make you realize that most of the problems are just like that. Oh yeah, I built something like this. This actually you're like, which is how to do this learning. Because what primary goal always is will be if you don't get it, I know I'm just why do you say it? Right, how many people see making money or to save money? Right, the first reality is that is currency, that is the metric we use in our world, how much money can we make from this. And they're thinking about what can we do to get more money. I see people on the website, they're logging funds, it's tiny, it's not huge. Don't care how much actually subscribe to the service. They're saying the easiest and hard to quit. I mean, how recurring charge do I have to service? Is that way, the annual was to get means. You must have for a year, about a year to cancel it. No, cancel it now. Why does this do that? Here's what here's important this. You're logging in? No, how many times first week that people raise hand? Did you go to gym all the time? And that's how they make money. Anybody tells you buy this membership and you don't go. Actually, you don't have a membership, actually go, but it's because it's cost the gym and I don't show up. Actually, like, is there something wrong? It's very different experience. Whereas, how many go to the gym facilities here on campus? They're paying for it, aren't you? You want something everyone else is using. And that's what this is all about. I think that's before. Google charges a certain amount of money per month to get ad for YouTube. Right? Based on my example, I suspect that the price of this set is just above what they were getting ad for. That's why the price of getting ad for YouTube varies in the country. I have this system. It's cheaper than Canada. All right, let's go now. We'll take something on Thursday, and the next 2 days we'll do something. And you can thank the yes, yeah, October 5th. I 2 weeks. I think October 6th. It's not that fast, but could be wrong. I started looking at October 6th. That should reveal in 15 minutes. That should reveal now. I don't think it's nice to me. I'll just notes here. I'll give you some free review. So you review that, and those will be graded. Your actual reviews should be different assignment, and those will be graded because you wait your critical analysis equal your own design. Well, then we're going to see it. Everything in the class is yeah. Right. That's why hash and URL. That's not because you use it and cheat. It's basically possible to get the right hash. If you're really shocked, you shouldn't use this class. You got to money in Bitcoin area because people really happy if you got that straight. Not just for the user shot. You just find out currency works. All proof work. It's fun. There's basically a problem that says you have a certain number of zeros. You can see zeros. You have a certain number of zeros in the shop hash of the page, and there's one value you're allowed to change. So in transactions, after you say all the transactions in the ledger and the amounts. And the problem is only we find amounts. So if you hash, it satisfies the requirement. You just you literally have each one. So what we do is essentially parallelize that. So like I'll do all the numbers numbers. There's 3 of us and we'll just do it in stripes. And when you find one, so you find a number beneath that particular ledger page satisfy the hash requirement, then you flood it with it. And because people learn, you don't actually flood it the right way, but you hold on to it. You start getting this one. if you see out in the network, those sensors, when somebody else starts on the north, then you immediately look yours. Yours will win. The reason you want to lag propagation is because you are starting to be in the next spot, because you know the hash rate pretty locally. It's totally it's really interesting to look at. From a computational math perspective, it's super simple. It's just a telemetry ledger with the hash rate page, the fractions, the fractions have balance, like the one and this magic value, and that's what you put on the set. And once it knows I did it, then it becomes possible to change it by hour. It takes nickel. You just go to computational plus, you don't have to change fast. You rather use diesel.
I feel like that's a good question for you. I'm sure that's fun. Also, you're using like, I think it would be good to ask share that you work with.
I actually seen one day when I'm working, I actually streamed it. We actually shot it, but I tried again. Here's what happens. And then
I might be out there.
it's a video. It's actually on CBC about the